Dr. Marcus Webb had spent 200 nights tracking bears in wilderness. At 3:47 a.m., every sound in the Blue Ridge Mountains stopped. Crickets, wind, water. His satellite tracker logged unknown interference. His motion sensor blinked red at nothing. Search teams found his camp on maps but couldn't reach it. The coordinates existed, the valley didn't. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Webb had been setting up bear monitoring equipment in these mountains for 12 years and could do it blindfolded. The Pisgah National Forest was his second home. Tonight marked day 8 of a 14-day research trip tracking 3 black bears fitted with GPS collars. Everything was routine. He knelt beside his tent at 7:45 p.m., connecting the motion sensor to its battery pack. The device would alert him if anything larger than a raccoon came within 50 yards of camp. Standard protocol. His fingers moved through the setup without thought. Red wire to positive terminal, black to negative. Test the LED. Green blink. Good. The evening air smelled like pine and approaching rain. Temperature dropping into the low 40s. Marcus pulled his fleece tighter and moved to check his satellite tracker, a $12,000 unit that could transmit data from anywhere on Earth. The screen glowed blue in the gathering darkness. All 3 bear signals showed strong. Bear 7 was 2 miles northwest. Bear 12, 3 miles southeast. Bear 19, a mile and a half due east. Normal patterns? They were settling into their evening routines just like him. He recorded the coordinates in his weatherproof notebook with practiced efficiency. PhD in wildlife biology from NC State. Former wilderness EMT. 200 nights solo in backcountry. This was what he did. This was what he was good at. Marcus pulled out his radio and keyed the mic. Station 7, this is Webb. Evening check-in. Static then. Copy that, Webb. How's it looking up there? All green. 3 collars transmitting clean. Weather holding. I'm set for the night. Roger. Next check tomorrow, 0800. Stay safe. Will do. Webb out. He clipped the radio back to his pack and allowed himself a small smile. Sarah at the ranger station probably thought he was crazy, spending 2 weeks alone up here. Most people did. But Marcus loved the solitude, loved the precision of the work, loved knowing he was contributing real data that would help protect these animals. His camp was efficient and organized. Tents secured on level ground. Food hung in a bear bag 15 feet up and 100 yards downwind. Water filtration system ready. First aid kit accessible. Emergency beacon within arm's reach, though he'd never needed it. He had 12 days of supplies remaining, more than enough for the 6 days left in his research window. Marcus set up his laptop inside the tent and began uploading the day's tracking data through the satellite link. The progress bar crawled across the screen. Connection strength at 82%. Excellent for this elevation. The data would sync to the university servers by morning. He thought about calling home but knew he wouldn't get cell signal this deep in the valley. That was fine. His daughter Hannah was used to him being off-grid. 8 years old, and she already understood that Daddy's work meant helping keep the bears safe. He'd promised to bring her up here next summer, show her how the tracking collars worked. She'd love it. The forest around him hummed with life. Crickets chirping, an owl calling from somewhere to the west, the distant sound of the creek running over rocks. All the normal evening sounds that meant everything was exactly as it should be. Marcus checked his watch. 8:30. He'd do one more equipment check at 11, then sleep until 3 a.m. for the overnight monitoring session. Standard routine. He had no idea these would be the last normal sounds he'd ever hear in this valley. At 9:30 p.m., Marcus sat cross-legged in his tent, reviewing the day's collar data on his laptop. The blue glow lit his weathered face as he scrolled through GPS coordinates and movement patterns. Bear 7 had covered 4 miles since dawn, mostly foraging in a berry thicket Marcus had documented last week. Normal behavior for this time of year. They were bulking up for winter, consuming 8,000 calories a day. He made notes in his field journal, the scratch of pencil on paper oddly loud in the enclosed space. 12 years of this work, and it still fascinated him. Each bear had distinct patterns, personalities almost. Bear 7 was cautious, avoiding human trails. Bear 12 boldly crossed logging roads. Bear 19 preferred higher elevations. His coffee had gone cold in its titanium mug, but Marcus drank it anyway. Caffeine would help for the 3 a.m. check. He'd learned long ago that wilderness research meant irregular sleep and cold meals. You adapted or you found a different career. The tent rustled in a light breeze. Through the mesh window, he could see stars appearing between the trees. Clear night, no weather concerns, perfect conditions for tracking. Marcus pulled out his phone to check the battery level. 68%, no signal, as expected. The satellite tracker handled all data transmission out here, but he kept the phone charged anyway. Backup navigation. Emergency photos if needed, and the picture of Hannah on his home screen, gap-toothed smile, messy brown hair, taken at her last soccer game. He'd missed that game for a conference in Asheville, made it up to her with ice cream and mini golf. But the guilt lingered. Single dad trying to balance career and parenting. His ex-wife had remarried, moved to Charlotte. Hannah stayed with him during the school year, weekends with her mom. It worked mostly. "Love you, kiddo," Marcus whispered to the photo before setting the phone aside. He checked his emergency beacon out of habit. Status light solid green. The device connected to search and rescue satellites. One button press would bring help within hours. He'd carried one for a decade and never activated it. Wasn't planning to start now. His watch alarm buzzed softly. 11 p.m. equipment check. Marcus pulled on his boots and grabbed his headlamp. The red light setting preserved night vision while he moved around camp. Everything looked good. Motion sensor armed, food bags secure, water bottles filled and treated. He made a slow circuit of the perimeter, checking for any signs of animal activity. Nothing. The forest sang its evening chorus. Crickets dominated, their steady rhythm punctuated by the occasional rustle of small mammals in the underbrush. A barred owl hooted from across the valley. Water trickled over stones in the creek 200 yards downhill. Wind whispered through pine branches. Marcus stood still for a moment, breathing it in. This was why he did this work. Not the PhD or the publications or the tenure track position at the university. This, being alone in a wild place that didn't care about deadlines or department politics or anything human. Just trees and animals and stone doing what they'd done for millions of years. He returned to his tent and set his watch alarm for 2:45 a.m., 15 minutes to wake up properly before the 3 a.m. monitoring session. Marcus crawled into his sleeping bag, pulled it up to his chin. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees. Sleep came quickly. Marcus woke at 3:42 a.m. without the alarm. His internal clock had adjusted years ago to wilderness schedules. He lay still for a moment, listening. Something felt wrong. The silence hit him like a physical weight. No crickets, no wind, no water sound from the creek. Nothing. Complete and total silence in a way that shouldn't exist in nature. Even in dead winter with snow muffling everything, you could hear wind or the creak of ice or something. This was different. This was absence. He sat up slowly, heart rate climbing. His breath visible in the cold air made no sound. He snapped his fingers next to his ear. The sound came through normal, so not his hearing. The forest had simply stopped. Marcus grabbed his headlamp and checked his watch. 3:47 a.m. He'd been asleep less than 4 hours but felt wide awake now, adrenaline kicking in. He pulled on his jacket and unzipped the tent. The motion sensor by the door blinked red. Movement detected, but his headlamp beam showed nothing outside. Empty forest, no animals, no wind moving the branches, just that oppressive, impossible silence. He stepped out of the tent, flashlight sweeping the perimeter. His boots on the ground made noise. The zipper on his jacket made noise. But the world around him contributed nothing, like standing in a soundproof room. Marcus moved to the motion sensor and checked its display. The device showed active detection. Something within 50 yards had triggered it, but the sensor had been dark when he'd gone to sleep. Whatever triggered it had done so recently. In this silence, his satellite tracker sat on a flat rock where he'd left it. Marcus picked it up and his stomach dropped. The screen displayed an error message he'd never seen. Unknown interference, signal lost. The device was military grade, designed for Arctic expeditions and Antarctic research stations. It didn't just lose signal, he powered it down and back up. Same message. Signal strength showed 0 bars. GPS coordinates frozen at his last recorded position. The radio was next. Marcus keyed the mic. Station 7, this is Webb. Do you copy? Static. Just static. But not normal static. This sounded compressed, digital, wrong somehow. He tried again. Same result. The radio showed it was transmitting, but nothing came back. Like shouting into a void. His emergency beacon sat clipped to his pack. Marcus checked it with growing dread. The status light blinked amber instead of solid green. System error. He pressed the test button. Nothing. The device that could summon rescue helicopters from anywhere on Earth had gone dead in the middle of the night. 3 independent systems failing simultaneously. Impossible. Unless something was interfering with all of them at once. Marcus stood in the silent forest, flashlight beam cutting through darkness that felt thicker than it should. The air pressure seemed wrong. Not painful, just off, like flying in an airplane during descent but standing on solid ground. He checked his phone. The screen lit up normally, 65% battery. But when he opened the GPS app, it showed his location as a gray dot with an error message. Location accuracy reduced due to interference. Every piece of electronic equipment was compromised, all at the same time, and the forest had stopped making sound. Marcus had spent 200 nights in wilderness. He'd weathered storms and startled bears and navigated by compass when GPS failed. He knew how to handle problems. This wasn't a problem. This was something else entirely. Marcus forced himself to slow down and think. Panic killed people in the wilderness faster than cold or hunger. He'd seen it during his EMT days. Hikers who got disoriented and ran until they collapsed. Stay calm, assess, adapt. He went back into his tent and pulled out his field notebook. Started writing by headlamp. 3:47 a.m. All natural sounds ceased simultaneously. Motion sensor triggered by unknown cause. All electronics showing interference. Air pressure feels abnormal. The act of writing steadied him. This was just another research problem. Observe, record, analyze. Marcus checked his remaining equipment. Compass, still functional. Needle pointing, steady north. Good. Paper maps in waterproof case. Water, 3 liters in bottles plus filtration system. Food, 12 days of meals and energy bars. First aid kit fully stocked. Knife, fire starter, emergency blanket. The basics were covered. If the equipment had failed, he'd hike out the old-fashioned way. 23 miles to Ranger Station 7. He knew the trail by heart. But first, wait for dawn. Moving in darkness was how people got hurt. 6 a.m. sunrise. Then he'd pack up and start hiking. Marcus tried the radio again. Same result. Dead static. He switched it off to conserve battery. The satellite tracker he left on, maybe the interference would clear. The emergency beacon stayed clipped to his pack despite the error light. The silence pressed against his eardrums. He stepped outside and spoke out loud. Testing. His voice sounded normal to him but seemed to die immediately, not echoing off the trees. He walked 20 yards from camp and looked back. His tent sat exactly where he'd pitched it. Everything looked normal. But that wrongness in the air persisted. Marcus returned and began preparing for the hike. He'd leave most of the monitoring equipment, too heavy, pack the essentials, emergency gear, food and water, navigation tools, move light and fast. He organized his pack methodically. Sleeping bag, 3 days of food, water bottles in side pockets, first aid kit and fire starter accessible. Checked his boots. Good tread, no damage. Changed into wool socks. The sky through the trees showed no hint of dawn yet. Marcus sat on a log and ate an energy bar, forcing himself to consume calories. His body would need fuel for 23 miles. He pulled out his paper map and studied it by flashlight, his campsite marked in pencil. Ranger Station 7 to the northeast. The trail followed a ridge for 8 miles, descended through a valley, crossed 2 streams, climbed another ridge. 12 hours of hiking at normal pace. At 5:30 a.m., the sky began to lighten. Marcus watched for sunrise, expecting forest sounds to return with daylight. Birds always started before dawn. But the silence continued. No birds, no wind, no water. The sun rose from the correct direction. That was something. At least basic geography still functioned. Marcus shouldered his pack at 6:15 and started hiking northeast. The weight felt good. 35 pounds, manageable. He'd left his tent standing with a note inside explaining his route. If search and rescue came looking, they'd find it. The trail should have been obvious. He'd hiked it twice before, but something was wrong with the landmarks. A quarter-mile from camp, a distinctive granite outcropping should have been on his right. Gone. Not eroded, just absent. Marcus stopped and checked his compass. Bearing correct. He was walking northeast, but the rock wasn't there. He kept moving. Maybe he'd misremembered the distance. At the 1-mile mark, he should have crossed a small creek. Marcus reached the spot and found dry earth. No water, no moisture. Like the stream had never existed. His GPS still showed the same error. He pulled out his phone and tried to mark his position. The dot refused to update, showed him still at his campsite despite 40 minutes of walking. Marcus stopped and drank water. The silence continued. His footsteps made sound. His pack creaking made sound. But the forest contributed nothing. He checked his compass obsessively. The needle pointed north steadily. He followed the bearing, trusting it over his eyes. 2 hours in, he should have gained 500 feet climbing the first ridge. Instead, the trail stayed flat. His altimeter watch showed the same elevation as camp. He'd walked 2 hours on flat ground when the map showed a climb. He stopped and spread the paper map on a rock. Traced his route. Camp here. Ridge here. His compass bearing was correct, but the terrain didn't match. Marcus tried a different approach. He left the trail and walked due north, watching his compass. 100 paces. He marked a tree with his knife, then walked back to the trail. The carved tree sat 30 paces away, not 100. He'd walked 100 paces but covered 30 paces of distance. He repeated the test. Same result. The space between steps didn't match the number of steps taken. "Okay," Marcus said out loud. "Okay, this is a problem." He sat and forced himself to eat another energy bar. Think. His equipment showed he was moving. Watch counted steps. Body knew it was hiking. But GPS and real distance didn't match. Like walking on a treadmill. Motion without progress. Marcus stood and tried walking backward while watching his compass. 50 paces backward to the north. Turned around. The trail was further away. Maybe 70 paces. He'd covered more distance walking backward than forward. That made no sense. But Marcus had just tested it twice. Direction mattered. Orientation mattered. The valley had rules, just not normal rules. He pulled out his phone and opened the camera. Unlike GPS, the camera worked. He took a photo of the trail ahead, walked forward 50 paces, took another photo, compared them. In the second photo, the trail looked closer than 50 paces away, like he'd walked maybe 20. But in his first photo, zooming in, he could see a dead branch on the ground. He looked ahead. That branch was right in front of him. So he had walked 50 paces, but the distance covered was compressed. Marcus experimented. Walking forward covered less distance than it should. Walking sideways covered more. Walking backward covered the most. And when he walked while looking through his phone camera instead of directly, distances stayed more consistent. Marcus checked his water. He'd consumed half a liter in 3 hours. At this rate, supplies would last 2 days, maybe 3 if he rationed, but he'd covered maybe a mile. At this pace, Ranger Station 7 might as well be on the moon. The camera trick bothered him. Looking through the phone screen made distances more accurate. Like the camera saw reality his eyes couldn't. He tested it again, walking 50 paces while watching only the screen. When he looked up, he'd covered close to 50 paces. Not perfect, but better. But walking while staring at a phone screen was dangerous. Easy to trip, and his phone battery had dropped to 58%. Using the camera constantly would kill it in hours. Marcus sat on a fallen log and thought through options. Keep trying to reach the ranger station. Return to camp and wait for rescue. Stay here and conserve resources. Waiting assumed this would stop. Maybe it wouldn't. Returning assumed rescue would come. But his emergency beacon was dead, and GPS showed him still at camp. If rescuers tried to reach his camp, Would they get trapped too? Option 1 gave him control. Keep moving. Adapt to the valley's new rules. Find a way out. He pulled out his notebook and wrote what he'd learned. Forward movement compressed. Backward movement expanded. Camera perception more accurate than direct vision. Compass functional. Sound absorption active. The sun was climbing but felt muted. Light seemed dimmer than it should at 8:30. Shadows fell at slightly wrong angles. He tried the radio. Static. On impulse, he held the radio up to his phone camera and watched the screen while transmitting. Through the camera, the radio looked fuzzy at the edges, like a photo out of focus. Marcus lowered the radio and looked directly. Sharp and clear. Raised the phone camera. Fuzzy. He tested other objects. His compass looked normal through the camera. His water bottle normal. His knife normal. But the radio, GPS tracker, emergency beacon, all looked fuzzy through the camera lens. Electronics. The common factor. The interference wasn't just blocking signals. It was doing something to the devices themselves. His phone worked because he'd turned off GPS and wasn't transmitting. The camera was passive, just receiving light. Marcus made a decision. Navigate using camera and compass. Move in whatever direction covered the most distance. Forget the trail. Just go northeast. Trust the compass. Trust the camera. He stood, adjusted his pack, and pulled up the camera app. Held the phone in his left hand, compass in his right. Started walking northeast but angled sideways, crab walking while watching the screen. It looked ridiculous, but through the camera he watched the forest move past at close to normal speed. He was covering ground. After 15 minutes, his legs ached from the awkward gait. He stopped and checked position. The trees around him looked different. Real progress. Maybe a quarter mile in 15 minutes. Not fast, but sustainable. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. 4 miles an hour of sideways walking, 6 hours to cover 23 miles. He had the daylight. He had the stamina. He drank water and ate another energy bar. His phone battery had dropped to 54%. This story takes time to craft. If you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Marcus made it another 2 miles before the battery issue became critical. 41% remaining. At this rate, he'd have maybe 3 hours of camera use left. Then he'd be navigating blind in a valley where straight lines didn't exist. He needed to conserve power. Take photos instead of continuous video. Walk 30 paces watching the screen, then 30 paces using landmarks. It was slower but necessary. The method worked until he reached what should have been a stream crossing. His map showed water flowing east to west, but Marcus found a dry creek bed filled with smooth stones that looked recently underwater. He knelt and touched them. Damp, cold, but no water flowing. He checked his compass. Still pointing north. This was definitely the right location. The creek existed, just not right now. Marcus cupped his hands and dug into the stones. 6 inches down, mud, wet mud. The water was here, just underground. Or maybe it was here sometimes and gone other times, like the valley was flickering between states. He pulled out his water bottle, 2.5 liters remaining. The filtration system was useless without a water source. If the creek stayed dry, he'd run out tomorrow. Think. The stream existed according to the map. The stones showed recent water flow. Maybe time was wrong here, like distance was wrong. Maybe the stream was running, just not when Marcus was looking at it. He set up his phone to take time-lapse photos. 1 photo every 10 seconds for 5 minutes. Propped it against a rock aimed at the dry creek bed, sat back and waited. When the sequence finished, he reviewed the photos. His breath caught. In frames 12 through 19, water appeared in the creek, not flowing in, just suddenly present. Then in frame 20, gone. The creek existed for roughly 80 seconds out of every 5 minutes. Marcus tested his theory, watched the dry stones, started counting. At 240 seconds, water materialized. It flowed normally for 80 seconds, then vanished. He had a window. 80 seconds every 4 minutes. Marcus set up his filtration system and waited. Pump in one hand, empty bottle in the other. Counted. 230. 240. Water appeared. He plunged the intake hose in and pumped frantically. Filled one bottle halfway, started another. 60 seconds. His arms burned. 75 seconds. He topped off the second bottle. 80 seconds. The water vanished. Marcus had gained 1.5 liters. 3.5 liters total now. Enough for another day. He sat back, breathing hard. His phone battery was at 37%. The time lapse had cost him, but he'd learned something crucial. Time wasn't just wrong here. It was layered, different moments occupying the same space. Marcus checked his watch. 11:15 a.m. He'd been hiking for 5 hours and covered maybe 3 miles. 20 miles to go. He wouldn't reach the ranger station before nightfall. He needed to move faster, risk more battery, push harder. Marcus stood and adjusted his pack, drank deeply, ate half an energy bar, pulled up the camera and started the sideways walk again, faster. 3 miles per hour. He could cover 10 more miles before dark. Find somewhere to camp. Finish tomorrow. The forest around him stayed silent. Trees stood motionless. His footsteps seemed muted, like the world was holding its breath. By 1 p.m., Marcus had covered another 4 miles. His phone battery was at 19%. His legs screamed from the sideways gait. But he was making progress. Then he saw his tent. Marcus stopped and stared. His orange tent sat in a clearing 50 yards ahead. Same position, same orientation. Even the same rock anchoring one corner. He walked closer, watching through his camera. The tent stayed solid, real. He touched it. Fabric moved under his fingers. He checked inside. His sleeping bag, his laptop, his monitoring equipment. Everything exactly as he'd left it. But he'd been hiking for 7 hours, covered 7 miles. This couldn't be his original campsite. He pulled out his compass. Northeast bearing maintained the entire hike. He'd never turned around. Marcus checked the ground for boot prints from this morning. Found them, leading away from camp toward the northeast, the same direction he'd been walking. His tracks showed him leaving and not returning. He stood in his campsite that shouldn't be here and felt reality slip further. Space wasn't just compressed or expanded. It was folded, looped. He'd walked 7 miles in a straight line and arrived back at the start. His satellite tracker sat on the rock, still showing the same error. Marcus checked the log. 7.2 miles of travel, northeast bearing consistent, but GPS coordinates showed 0 displacement. He'd moved 7 miles through space that put him back at the start. Marcus sat heavily. His water was at 2 liters, food consumed, battery at 19%. All that progress, meaningless. He forced himself to think. Distance and direction didn't work normally. Time was layered, electronics were affected. His camera showed more accurate perception. Maybe leaving wasn't about distance. Maybe it was about understanding. Then he noticed something. His food bag, the one he'd hung in a tree 100 yards from camp, was gone. The tree was gone, replaced by a different tree. Wrong species, wrong size. He walked to where the tree should have been, found his food bag on the ground beneath the new tree, opened it. Inside, instead of 12 days of freeze-dried meals, he found 3 days of MREs, military rations he'd never carried. Marcus checked the dates. Packed in 2003, 20 years old, but sealed, intact. He hadn't brought these. Someone else had. Someone who'd been trapped here before. Someone who'd left supplies for whoever came next. This wasn't his campsite anymore. Or it was his campsite overlapped with someone else's. Multiple times, multiple people, occupying the same space across different moments. He was alone here, but he wasn't the first. Marcus searched his camp, looking for anything that wasn't his. Found a weathered notebook buried under leaves, water-stained but readable. Different handwriting, dates from October 1998. Day 4, still can't get out. Tried every direction, always loop back. Food running low. Radio dead. If anyone finds this, don't try to hike out. It doesn't work that way. Marcus flipped through pages. The writer was Jenkins, Forest Service researcher. Entered the valley October 8, 1998. Last entry October 14th. Day 7. Found supplies from someone before me. Canned food from 1987. Same year the ranger station was evacuated. This place has been wrong for at least 11 years. Maybe forever. I'm going to try something different tomorrow. Not going to fight it. Going to wait. See if the valley changes. No entry for day 8. The notebook ended there. Today was October 12th, 2023. Jenkins had been here 25 years ago. The evacuation 36 years ago. How many people had been trapped in this loop? He kept searching. Found a rusty canteen. Military issue, old style. Found boot prints in dried mud. Preserved somehow. Different sizes. Different treads. Multiple people had been to this exact spot across decades. But no bodies. No bones. Either they got out or the valley took them somewhere else. Marcus's phone battery hit 15%. He made a decision. Save the remaining power for emergencies. He was back at camp anyway. Rest, eat, think. Wait until tomorrow and try a different approach. He built a fire using the fire ring. The flames looked normal. Felt warm. Made crackling sounds he could hear. Fire was natural, not electronic. The anomaly didn't affect it. Marcus cooked one of the MREs, beef stew from 2003. Tasted fine. He ate slowly, letting his body recover. The silence persisted, but felt less oppressive. Maybe he was adapting. Knowing others had experienced this made it bearable. He wasn't crazy, and others had survived it. Jenkins's notebook ended, but that didn't mean Jenkins died. Maybe he found the way out. "Don't fight it," Jenkins had written. "Wait, see if the valley changes." Marcus pulled out his notebook and wrote everything he'd observed. The spatial compression, the time layers, the electronics fuzzing through his camera, the water appearing and disappearing, other people's supplies, patterns. There had to be patterns. He wrote, "Hypothesis: the valley exists in multiple time states simultaneously. Movement through space triggers movement through time. Camera perceives across layers." If that was true, getting out wasn't about physical distance. It was about finding the right temporal spatial combination, the right moment when the valley's barrier was thin enough to cross. Jenkins had tried waiting. Marcus had tried moving. Maybe both were necessary. Move at the right time, or wait in the right place. His watch showed 4:30 p.m. The sun was setting. The light was fading. Marcus fed the fire and settled in for another night. Tomorrow he'd try Jenkins's approach. Stop fighting. Start observing. Watch for changes. Look for the moment when the barrier weakened. He had water. He had food. He had shelter. He could wait. As darkness settled, Marcus pulled out his phone one more time. 12% battery. He opened the camera and took a photo of the fire. Through the lens, he saw something that made his stomach drop. Behind the flames, transparent like a ghost, stood a figure. Human-shaped, watching him. He lowered the phone and looked directly at the fire. Nothing there. Just flames and darkness beyond. Raised the phone again. The figure was still there. Closer now. Marcus could make out details. A ranger uniform. Old style, like from the 80s. The figure's mouth moved like it was speaking, but no sound came. Marcus took a screenshot. The figure showed clearly in the image. He zoomed in on the uniform patch. Name tag read, Chen. The 1987 evacuation. This was one of the Rangers who'd been here when it started. Marcus woke at 2 a.m. to something he hadn't heard in 30 hours. Sound. Real sound. An owl calling. Then crickets, faint but unmistakable. The forest was coming back to life. He sat up fast, heart pounding, grabbed his phone. 8% battery. Turned on the camera and panned around camp. Through the screen, the world looked different. More solid, less fuzzy. The temporal layers were separating. The owl called again. Marcus heard it clearly without the muted quality that had persisted since the silence began. He checked his watch. 2:14 a.m., October 13th. He'd been trapped almost 24 hours. His satellite tracker suddenly beeped. Marcus grabbed it. The screen had changed. Signal acquired. Uploading data. The device was reconnecting. The interference was weakening. He pulled out his radio. Keyed the mic. Station 7, this is Webb. Do you copy? Static. But different static. Normal static. He tried again. Station 7, Webb here. Emergency situation. Do you copy? A crackle, then, Webb, Marcus, is that? Breaking up. Location? I'm at my camp coordinates. 36.0, 234 north, 82.8, 856 west. I've been trapped by some kind of spatial anomaly. Can you confirm receiving? Copy. Sending team. Dawn, hold position. The signal cut out, but Marcus had gotten through. Rescue was coming at dawn, 4 hours away. He walked to the edge of camp. The trees looked normal now, solid. He could see stars through the canopy. The valley was releasing him. The barrier was thinning. But why? What had changed? Marcus thought back. He'd tried hiking out, failed, returned to camp, found supplies from others, built a fire, waited. The fire, natural, not electronic. The anomaly hadn't affected it, and he'd stopped fighting, stopped trying to force his way out. Just accepted where he was and waited. Jenkins had written the same thing. Don't fight it. Wait. Maybe that was the key. The valley trapped people who tried to leave by force, but released people who stopped resisting. His phone buzzed. Text message from Sarah. Marcus, your tracker just came online. Sending helicopter at first light. You okay? He typed back. Alive. Trapped 24 hours in spatial temporal anomaly. Have extensive documentation. Don't send anyone else in until I'm out and debriefed. The message sent. Actually sent. His phone showed full bars. Marcus checked his satellite tracker. It was uploading 2 days of cached data. GPS coordinates showing his loop. 7 miles out, 7 miles back. The device had recorded everything. He opened Jenkins' notebook and read the final entry. Day 7. Going to wait. See if the valley changes. Jenkins had figured it out too. Stop fighting. The valley would release you when you stopped trying to escape. But Jenkins's notebook ended there. So either he got out and left the notebook behind, or something else happened on day 8. The fire crackled. Marcus fed it more wood. He pulled out his phone and took a photo. Through the camera, everything looked solid. No transparent figures, no fuzzing. He checked the time-lapse photos from the creek. The water had been appearing and disappearing every 4 minutes. The most recent time-lapse showed water flowing continuously. Time had stabilized. Marcus sat by the fire and waited for dawn. His body ached from the awkward sideways hiking. His legs were bruised. His mind felt stretched thin. But he was alive. He'd survived something that shouldn't exist. The owl called again. Marcus smiled. That sound meant normalcy was returning. At 4 a.m., Marcus heard the helicopter. Rotors beating the air, getting closer. He grabbed his emergency flare and ran to the clearing, struck the flare and held it high. Bright red flame cutting through darkness. The helicopter spotlight found him 30 seconds later. The chopper circled once, then began to descend. Marcus stepped back. The skids touched ground. 2 figures jumped out, a ranger and a paramedic. They ran to Marcus beneath the spinning rotors. Dr. Webb, the ranger shouted. You injured? No, dehydrated, exhausted, but mobile. The paramedic checked his eyes, his pulse. You're coming with us. Can you walk to the bird? Yes. Grab only essentials. We'll come back for your gear. Marcus ran to his tent, grabbed his phone, his field notebook, Jenkins's notebook, his satellite tracker, stuffed them in a small pack, left everything else. The paramedic guided him to the helicopter and strapped him in, handed him a headset. We're getting you out of here, the ranger said. Medical facility in Asheville. Full debrief after you're checked out. The helicopter lifted. Marcus watched his camp shrink below, his orange tent, his fire still burning. Then the trees closed in and it was gone. How long was I out of contact? Marcus asked. 31 hours, the ranger said. Your last check-in was 7:45 p.m. on October 11th. We got your distress call at 2:23 a.m. this morning. Your tracker came online at the same time. Marcus did the math. He'd experienced 36 hours. They'd measured 31. 5 hours of missing time. Did you send anyone else in looking for me? We tried. Yesterday morning. 2 rangers hiked to your GPS coordinates. Found nothing. No camp, no tracks. What changed? Don't know. At 2:23 a.m., your tracker suddenly appeared on our system. Uploaded 2 days of data in about 10 seconds. Marcus looked out the window. The forest below looked completely normal. No sign of spatial anomalies. The valley had returned to normal when it released him. There were others, Marcus said. People trapped before me. I found evidence. A notebook from 1998, supplies from 2003, references to an evacuation in 1987. The ranger and paramedic exchanged glances. We'll need to discuss this in the debrief. There are protocols for this area. You know about it, the anomaly. Some of us do, not many. You're the fourth person to come out in the last 20 years. Most don't. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Most don't come out. 3 came out before you, 4 now, 7 went in, that we know of. 7 in, 4 out. 3 people still trapped somewhere in that folded space. Marcus thought about Jenkins, about the ranger named Chen from 1987, about the person who'd left those MREs. The helicopter banked east toward Asheville. The sun was rising, painting the horizon orange and gold. The hospital admitted Marcus at 6:30 a.m. They hooked him to an IV, ran blood tests, checked for injuries. The doctor found nothing serious, mild dehydration, bruising, exhaustion, but vital signs stable. Sarah from the ranger station arrived at 8 a.m. with a woman Marcus didn't recognize. Mid-50s, gray hair, carrying herself like law enforcement. Dr. Webb, I'm Agent Torres, National Park Service, Special Investigations Unit. She pulled up a chair. I need to ask you some questions. Special Investigations. We handle unusual situations in protected areas. She pulled out a digital recorder. Do you consent to this being recorded? Yes. Torres pressed record. October 13th, 8:15 a.m. Interview with Dr. Marcus Webb. Describe what happened starting from October 11th. Marcus told her everything. The silence at 3:47 a.m. The equipment failures. The spatial compression. The time layers. Walking 7 miles and ending up where he started. Finding Jenkins's notebook. The valley releasing him when he stopped fighting. Torres listened without interrupting. When he finished, did you see anyone else while trapped? Through my phone camera, I saw what looked like a person, transparent, wearing an old ranger uniform. Name tag said Chen. Torres's expression shifted. You saw Ranger Chen. Through the camera only, not directly. Chen was one of the rangers who evacuated in 1987. He went back in 3 days later. Never came out. Torres leaned forward. You're the first to report seeing anyone from inside the anomaly. He's still in there, after 36 years. We don't know. Time doesn't work the same inside. For Chen, it might have been 3 days. Marcus thought about Jenkins, about whoever left those MREs, all potentially still experiencing their first day while decades passed outside. You need my data, Marcus said. Everything I recorded. Photos, time lapses, field notes, the patterns I observed. Yes, we've been studying this since 1987. Your documentation is the most detailed we've received. What caused it? Torres hesitated. In 1986, illegal toxic waste dump attempt in that valley. Local activists stopped it. Cleanup completed March 87. The first spatial distortion started April 87. The contamination caused this. We think something in the valley's ecosystem responded to the threat, like an immune system. It created a barrier to protect itself. Marcus absorbed that, a wilderness defending itself. How big is the zone? It varies, sometimes a few acres, sometimes square miles. Your campsite was on the edge, which is probably why you got out. People who go deeper. Torres trailed off. Don't come back. Usually not. Marcus looked at his field notebook. I need to go back. There are people still in there. They need help. Torres shook her head. No, you got lucky. Next time you might not. I'm the only one who's documented how it works. The patterns, the rules. The answer is no. We can't authorize it. Marcus met her eyes. I'm not asking for authorization. The hospital released Marcus at 2 p.m. with instructions to rest and follow up in a week. Sarah drove him back to the ranger station in silence for the first 20 minutes. "You're not really thinking about going back in," she finally said. Marcus stared out the window at the mountains. 3 people are still trapped. Maybe more we don't know about. And maybe they're dead. Torres said the zone is unpredictable. You could go in and never come out. I came out. Because you got lucky. Because the valley decided to let you go. What if it doesn't next time? Marcus didn't have an answer. She was right. He'd survived by accident, not skill. By stopping his attempts to escape, rather than successfully navigating out. The valley had released him on its own terms. But that meant the valley had terms, rules, a logic, even if it wasn't human logic. And Marcus had started to understand it. Sarah pulled into the ranger station parking lot. "Your truck's still at the trailhead. I'll drive you up tomorrow to get it. Right now you need food and real sleep." Inside the station, Sarah made coffee and pulled out sandwiches. Marcus ate without tasting. His phone sat on the table. He opened the Photos app and scrolled through his documentation. "Can I see?" Sarah asked. Marcus showed her the sequence of the creek appearing and disappearing. Her expression shifted from skepticism to confusion to fear. "Jesus, that's real." Every 4 minutes, 80 seconds of water, then nothing. Time layered on itself. Sarah sat down heavily. "We've been managing this forest for 36 years with that thing in it, and we never really understood what it was." Marcus swiped to another photo, his GPS track. 7.2 miles traveled, 0 displacement. "I walked in a straight line according to my compass, covered real distance according to my steps, but ended up where I started. Space isn't broken in there. It's just connected differently." You're talking about going back into that, deliberately. If I can understand the folding pattern, I can navigate it, find where the trapped people are, guide them out. Or you get trapped with them. Marcus thought about Hannah. His daughter's 8th birthday was in 12 days. He'd promised to be there. Couldn't risk leaving her without a father. But he also couldn't ignore 3 people stuck in a place where time didn't pass normally, where Chen might still think it was 1987, where Jenkins might still be on day 7. "Give me 3 days," Marcus said. "Let me analyze the data, build a better model of how the valley works. Then I'll decide." Sarah studied him. "You've already decided. You're just giving yourself time to plan it." She was right, but Marcus didn't admit it. Marcus spent the next 2 days at his apartment, turning his living room into a research station. Maps across the floor, photos printed, 3 notebooks filled with calculations. His laptop ran continuously, processing GPS data, analyzing time-lapse sequences, building models of the spatial distortions. Hannah called on day 2. Her mom had told her about Dad's accident in the mountains. "Did you see any bears?" Hannah asked, her voice bright. Marcus smiled despite his exhaustion. "Not this trip, kiddo, but I got some interesting data. Mom says you're coming for my birthday. You promised we'd go to the trout farm. I'll be there, I promise." "You better be. I'm turning 8. That's a big deal." After the call ended, Marcus stared at his daughter's photo. 8 years old. She needed her father. He couldn't take stupid risks. But then he looked at the photo of Chen through his camera. Transparent but visible. Still there after 36 years. Marcus returned to his work. The patterns were becoming clearer. The valley's spatial folding followed a mathematical structure, not random, not chaotic. Organized according to rules Marcus was starting to map. Forward movement compressed space by 0.3. Backward expanded it by 0.7. Sideways stayed close to 1:1. But those ratios changed based on time of day. At 3:47 a.m., when the silence had started, compression was maximum. By 2:14 a.m. the next day, when sounds returned, the ratio had normalized. The valley cycled every 24 hours. Maximum distortion at 3:47 a.m. Minimum at 2:14 p.m. Exactly 12 hours offset. He grabbed his phone and called Torres. "Dr. Webb, I thought I told you." The valley cycles, 24-hour pattern, maximum spatial distortion at 3:47 a.m., minimum at 2:14 p.m. That's when you can navigate it most easily. Silence then. How do you know this? GPS data, time-stamped movement logs. I've been analyzing it for 2 days. The pattern is consistent. At 2:14 p.m., space behaves almost normally. Dr. Webb, we're not authorizing any entry into the zone. But if someone were to enter, hypothetically, 2:14 p.m. would be safest, and they'd need to be out before 3:47 a.m., 13 and a half hours before the next maximum distortion. Torres's voice went cold. You're planning to go back in. I'm providing analysis of the data I collected. Marcus, listen to me. Even if you're right about the cycles, you don't know what else is in there. Temporal displacement, memory distortion. People have reported seeing things that aren't there. Like seeing Chen through my camera when he was invisible to my eyes. Exactly. Your perception can't be trusted inside the zone. Marcus thought about that. His 36 hours measured as 31 hours outside. 5 hours of missing time. What if I mark time externally? Marcus said. Set up a camera outside the zone, recording continuously, time-stamped. Then I know exactly how long I've been inside. And if you can't get back to check the camera, then I'm in the same situation as Chen and Jenkins. Torres sighed. I can't stop you. You're a civilian. But I'm officially advising against this, and I won't authorize any rescue attempts if you get trapped again. Understood. When are you planning this hypothetical entry? Marcus checked his calendar. Tomorrow, October 15th, 2:14 p.m. entry time. I'll be out by 3 a.m. latest. You're giving yourself less than 13 hours. I don't need 13 hours. I need to get in, find where the trapped people are, and mark the location. First trip is reconnaissance. You're talking about multiple trips into that thing, if that's what it takes. Marcus arrived at the trailhead at 1 p.m. on October 15th. Sarah's truck was already there. She leaned against the hood, arms crossed. I'm not here to stop you, she said. I'm here to make sure someone knows exactly when you went in and when to call for help if you don't come out. Marcus nodded. 13-hour window. If I'm not back by 3 a.m., contact Torres. Already have her number programmed. Sarah held up her phone. Also have your ex-wife's number, in case someone needs to tell Hannah what happened to her dad. That hit harder than Marcus expected. Sarah's expression softened. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to make you think about what you're risking. You have a daughter. 3 people are trapped in there. They had families too. Chen's wife died in 2009. Jenkins never married. We don't know about the third person. You're risking your life for ghosts. Marcus shouldered his pack. Lighter this time. No tent, no sleeping bag. Just essentials. Water, energy bars, first aid kit, rope, compass, 2 phones fully charged, extra battery packs, headlamp, emergency beacon, and his field notebook. I'll be back by 3 a.m., he said. Sarah pulled something from her truck, a satellite phone. Different model than yours, different frequency. Maybe it'll work. I programmed my number in, speed dial 1. Marcus took it. Thank you. Don't thank me, just come back. He checked his watch. 1:47 p.m., 27 minutes before optimal entry time. Marcus walked to the edge of the trailhead and stared into the forest. From here, it looked completely normal. Marcus pulled out his phone and set up a camera on a tripod aimed at the trailhead. Started a time-lapse recording, 1 frame per second. If he didn't come back, there would be a record of when he entered. He left a note in his truck. Entered affected zone at 2:14 p.m., October 15th. If not returned by 3 a.m., October 16th, do not send rescue. Notify Torres and Hannah. Tell Hannah I love her and I'm sorry. At 2 p.m., he walked back to Sarah. She handed him a thermos of coffee. You're insane, she said. Probably. Your daughter's birthday is in 10 days. I know. You better make it back. I will. At 2:12 p.m., Marcus started down the trail. Sarah stayed at the trailhead, watching. He looked back once. She raised a hand in a half wave. The forest closed around him. Sounds were normal. Birds calling, breeze through leaves. Everything as it should be. Marcus hiked steadily, checking his compass every few minutes. Northeast bearing. 3 miles to where his camp had been. At 2:40 p.m., he reached the clearing. His tent was gone, retrieved after his rescue. But the fire ring remained, the rock where he'd placed his tracker. Marcus checked his watch. 2:43 p.m. He'd covered 3 miles in 31 minutes. Normal hiking speed. The valley was behaving. He pulled out his phone and took a reference photo, then started walking deeper, past where his camp had been, into the area where the spatial folding had been most severe. His GPS tracked his movement, forward progress matching his steps, still normal. At 3:14 p.m., Marcus found something that stopped him cold. A tent, orange like his, but different brand, older. The fabric sun-faded and brittle with age. Set up properly, stakes driven in, rainfly secured, like someone had pitched it yesterday. But the zipper pull was oxidized green. The tent poles showed decades of corrosion. Marcus knelt and opened the tent flap. Inside, a sleeping bag, a backpack, a camp stove, and a wallet lying open. He picked up the wallet carefully. The driver's license inside showed a man's face. David Jenkins. Date of birth, March 7, 1971. License issued 1997. Marcus had found Jenkins's camp. 25 years after Jenkins had entered the valley. The tent preserved perfectly, like time had stopped the moment Jenkins left it. But where was Jenkins? If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and share it. It helps the next person find their way here.